Welcome to Mind Matters, our first podcast on topic of mental health. Nidhi is our esteemed guest today. Thank you, Nidhi, for joining us. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Dhanush, for having me.
Yeah, our pleasure. And topic of the conversation today is really, the typical challenges people face in understanding their own mental well-being. What are the typical barriers they run into when, it comes to asking for help? What really stops them from doing so? Because almost 50% of the people in the United States, who have some sort of mental health conditions don't even ask for help. And, you being a therapist and an executive coach for a long time, and, me being the founder of Kana, which is building an AI co-pilot for therapists, we can get into some of those insights. Nidhi, you want to introduce yourself, Nidhi, for our audience today?
Sure. My name is Nidhi Kaul, and I'm a licensed therapist and executive coach, as Dhanuj mentioned. I have over 10 years of experience working in mental health as well as an executive coach. And I actually started my journey as a therapist working at Kaiser Permanente in the outpatient adult psychiatry clinic. I worked there for several years doing individual therapy, group therapy, doing crisis management, triage support. So kind of had a lot of roles that I played while working at Kaiser. And over the last few years, I started my own business. I left Kaiser, and now I've been leaning more towards my coaching, as providing services to working professionals. So people working at companies like Google, Meta, Netflix, startup founders. And a lot of what I do is provide emotional support, help people with learning how to communicate effectively, conflict management, whether it's in personal relationships or at work in professional relationships. I love what I do, love being a support to my clients, and I'm happy to be here today to talk more about that.
Well, absolutely. Your passion clearly shows, Nidhi, and you've been a great support in our journey as well of Kana, and a little bit about us. I am the co-founder and CEO of Kana. We've been, on this venture. It is an AI startup for about a year, and we are building AI co-pilot to really empower therapists like yourself. And really, our mission is to transform therapists into super therapists, provide a platform to everybody who is really seeking mental health care, an easy access, a judgment-free zone, a safe and a private zone, so that we can really break down the barriers of accessibility and outreach of mental health care. Let's get started with Mind Matters episode 1. We all know how precarious the situation is of mental health care in US, and ever since COVID-19, things have become worse and worse. And I totally understand that how much of a burden this has really created in terms of the social burden, the economic burden on our country. You want to kind of give us a perspective of how things been since COVID-19, and how are the things looking like in terms of people seeking mental health care, and what does it mean for therapists like yourself?
Yeah, so Dhanuj, I mean, you're onto something with mentioning the pandemic. I think that had a huge impact on the rise of mental health problems, and also the rise in people seeking services from mental health providers. I can just say from personal experience that I see so many clients now seeking support, and there just not being enough clinicians to provide the support that is needed. And I can, tell you a few statistics that have actually been after the pandemic. So these are coming from like around 2021, 2023. The World Health Organization estimated that 1 in 4 people worldwide will be affected by mental or neurological disorders at some point in their lives. So this means that there's about 25% of people in the world that will experience mental health issues at some point in their life. And in the United States, which is where we live, the National Institute of Mental Health reports that nearly 50% of adults will experience a mental illness at some point in their lifetime. Every year in the US, 1 in 5 adults experiences a serious mental illness. So what that means is that, when we are meeting friends, when we're meeting our colleagues and we're having these conversations, we probably don't realize how many of the people around us are experiencing symptoms of a mental health problem.
So sounds like things have really snowballed since COVID-19, and There are various factors which are contributing to it. And you bring up a good point. So how does one really understand and know that, yes, this is a mental health condition, and now is the time for me to reach out and ask for help? Because that's very, very subjective matter, and it's very difficult for the person who is feeling that, for them to kind of make a judgment on their own.
You are absolutely right about that, Tanuj. I think a lot of people don't even realize that what they're experiencing is a mental health problem. There's quite a few signs and symptoms that you can look out for. One of them being your mood. So you notice that there's persistent feelings of hopelessness, of being down, feeling really anxious, nervous, imagining worst case scenarios. And I say persistent, meaning that there's several days in a week that you are consistently feeling that way. That's a sign that maybe mental health support is needed. There's also, symptoms of psychosis, of course, and that's actually objective. So, right now you ask me, how can I subjectively determine whether I need support? I can look at my own behavioral patterns, my own mood, thought patterns, and assess if they are harming me or helping me. And that will determine whether I need mental health support. And then there are objective signs that people can observe in others. So, how does my friend show up? Do they look really down? Do they look really nervous and stressed out? Are they experiencing thoughts of delusion or psychosis? Are they having substance issue problems? Again, these are questions you can ask yourself and you can ask for someone else. The other thing to consider when thinking about mental health problems is really looking at the intensity of the symptoms, the frequency at which you're experiencing these symptoms, and the duration. And duration, I mean, okay, are these symptoms that have been happening for a week? Are they going on for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month, a year, right? How long are they persisting? And then the last piece of it is, you're identifying what the symptoms are, whether it's problems with your energy, appetite, concentration, mood. You're acknowledging the intensity and the duration and the frequency. And then the third piece of it is, are they creating an impairment in your functioning? How much distress is a person experiencing day to day that makes it challenging for them to take that shower, that makes it challenging for them to pick up a phone call or meet friends or show up at work or be present in the way that they'd like to be? The one thing I would say is, if there's any doubt, go and seek support from meeting a professional and having an assessment done to determine if what they're feeling and thinking is on the spectrum of appropriate or whether it's creating harm in their life.
Yeah. And based on what you said, I'm just thinking to myself that how critical is the role of the family and friends and people around, somebody who is undergoing a mental health condition, to really spot those fine behavioral changes so that somebody can make the recommendation, hey, something seems off and you should probably seek help. Half of American population, which is suffering from some sort of a mental health condition, do not even go out and ask for help. Why do you think that is?
The affordability and the accessibility. I mean, just speaking about affordability, right? There's high deductible costs, there's high co-payments. People don't even understand what their benefits are and what can get covered. And that can be a deterrent to receiving support, just the lack of affordability. And, accessibility. If you are a parent of a newborn, maybe you don't have the ability to leave the house and to go get services, or to even find out about services. You don't have the bandwidth. You don't know, again, even if what you are going through warrants seeking support. So part of it is a lack of knowledge of the resources. A part of it is a lack of awareness of how the resources can actually be helpful. I've had so many times people tell me that they're scared to go to a clinic, a psychiatry clinic, because they don't want to run into people that they know.
Yeah.
Of course, the paradox of that is that, of course, there's going to be people that if you run into them, these are people that are also seeking support. But when you are feeling depressed, and you're feeling really anxious and nervous, and you're suffering in pain, it's hard to get the motivation as it is to seek services. And then on top of that, when you have these barriers that make it challenging to know who to contact, where to go, to understand what the financial cost of it is, it's easy to get deterred. And then you add this social stigma of it, the concern, the worry that people are going to judge you for seeking support, that there's something really wrong with you if you do it. It can be really challenging for people to overcome that.
Yeah, I mean, seems like a pretty complicated path in terms of how to access care. And what we have read in some of those reports is that sometimes people question whether therapy is actually a form of treatment or not. How efficient it is, how effective it is. Will it really work for me? So can you share any story you may think of? I mean, in terms of treating a real client of yours where you saw the impact and something you would want to kind of motivate our listeners and audience today to really give them confidence that yes, therapy would work for you. Just give it a try.
Yeah, and I do want to add to that, Thanuj, that you're speaking to something really important here. I mean, I have friends and family members who are resistive to receiving therapy services. So this is not this is like a problem that everyone faces, and in understanding how it can be effective. So I appreciate you asking that question. I mean, as I mentioned, I've been doing this for over 10 years now, and I've seen, I don't know, at least 500, 600 people at this point that I've served. And there's quite a few success stories in there. I'll speak to one that's more recent because it's more fresh on my mind. I had a female client not too long ago who was suffering from a lot of general anxiety. Now, general anxiety and anxiety disorders are very common. And what's interesting about them is people just think this is how I operate. They don't even actually realize that this is the intensity, the duration, the experience that they're having is doesn't need to be the case. I really want to say that people experience these symptoms and they don't realize that they could be feeling better. They have just kind of accepted that, okay, I'm an anxious person and that's going to hold me back. And they kind of live with it, right? And for those who find the motivation, find the direction, have the support, and come and receive services, it's really a wonderful experience to see them overcome it. So, as I said, there was this female client of mine. She actually worked at Google, had a lot of general anxiety. She was around her mid-20s. And it showed up at work in terms of how present she was, how productive she could be, constantly comparing herself to other people, constantly worrying about worst case outcomes happening, whether it's her manager thinking that she's ineffective or her partner thinking that she's not a good person, or friends feeling like she's falling short. So just a lot of worries about many different parts of her life, and feeling always like she had to be productive, and especially in the Bay Area, I'm sure Thanuj, that a lot of folks have this feeling like every minute has to be used and I have to be an overachiever. And yep, there's just a lot of pressure. So, yeah. So again, that was kind of the context, having some sleep problems, having some appetite problems and difficulty focusing because of this level of anxiety. And again, it was seeping into her relationships with people because she was also feeling irritable now, getting irritated easily because she was so nervous and on edge. So over the course of about 3 months, I think it took for us meeting individually and working through some of the fears, practicing self-compassion, self-acceptance. I have to speak to this because I have heard this way too many times. There's this misconception that all therapists do is listen. And there is a power to listening. So I don't want to minimize that. But there are times when what we need, myself, my client, is someone who just hears them. And often times than not, what you need is someone to offer you a different perspective. And so that's really the role that I play with this client too. It was helping tease out some of those negative thoughts, where they came from, why she's stuck in that pattern of thinking about things in that certain way. Shedding this identity of being an anxious person as well, and being able to say, like, no, I can show up differently. After those few months of working on this, she was able to observe when the anxiety came up and let the anxious thoughts pass. Like she may just notice like, oh, I'm worrying about this, but okay, there's no credit to this. It's okay. I can let it go. And I remember that in our last few conversations, now it wasn't about the anxiety. We were now talking about how's she going to get promoted at work.
Wow.
And she could, and she believed that she could, which again, a few months back was not the case. At that time, it was more like, I'm going to get laid off. I'm not good enough. Like it went from such a different narrative from not being good enough to a place where she had the belief now that she can get promoted. So it was quite an energy shift from where we started and where we ended.
Power of listening. Those were the key words, Nidhi. And if you're wondering, why do I talk to you so much? There is the answer. Okay, given that, we are in Bay Area and, we are talking to our audience across the globe, I also want to ask your perspective in terms of how do you see technology changing mental health care? What are the benefits for clients? What are the benefits for therapists and coaches, executive coaches like yourself? Where do you say this trend going?
Yeah, so I mean, I think the pandemic actually evolved the landscape of mental health treatment and medical treatment in general, because suddenly we all had to provide services via telehealth. And I think that really opened the door to accessibility and affordability of care. So for me, I mean, my business relies on telehealth completely and technology. I offer my services online. The data that I collect from my clients is through my platform. My appointments are through my platform, scheduling. I mean, everything I do is via the use of technology. So I would say my business completely relies on it. So for providers, there's so many benefits to having access to technology, between the affordability, even for ourselves, because we don't have to now rent out a space to provide treatment. We can create this confidential space for our clients. And then for our clients, there's so many advantages I hear about. Like, I don't have clients now saying, oh, I have to work that day, I can't make it. I can't leave work early to make it for this appointment. That's not an issue because they can take these appointments from their offices. We spoke to this before, but even the stigma of it, Thanuj, there's a extra level of privacy in providing treatment in video conversations or telephone conversations. Clients don't have to worry about running into anyone when they're participating in appointments. So, I mean, I think it's been really valuable. And right now I'm just speaking about the platform that we use. Forget about the fact that, yes, we also can use technology to collect information about our clients' well-being, right? And then to plan our treatment accordingly. It's been really valuable.
And that's precisely, what Khana's aim as well. Speaking as the CEO of Khana Health, this is the platform which we are actually building for service providers like for yourself, Nidhi. And we plan to leverage, artificial intelligence, machine learning techniques, natural language processing to provide a platform which would leverage real world evidence, data, certified sources, knowledge bases to really understand the symptoms, provide a platform to your clients so that they can open up even more, talk about, their condition, their situation, their symptoms more openly, which would, help us generate more insights for providers like yourself, continuously make those recommendations that this is a risk profile looking like, these are the symptoms looking like, these are the, one diagnosis or multiple diagnoses which are presented to the therapist. So therapists can make the choice in terms of, based on, what I'm seeing from this client, what are the best possible conclusion in terms of diagnosis. And then we make the recommendation after that, based on the user profile, the risk profile, the symptoms, the diagnosis. We spoke to several therapists like yourself, and a lot of them told us that, a lot of this knowledge is sometimes buried in the books, or we were told in our med school, and, we don't remember all of those facts and figures at the top of our mind. So it is always good to get that, second opinion, live prompting when we are doing diagnosis with our customers. a gentle reminder that, while you're thinking of this treatment option A, there is a possibility that this treatment option B could be actually more beneficial for your customers and clients. And not only that, whatever you choose as a treatment option for your client, we actually help, the service providers track their customers and clients and patients, whether that treatment option is really making their patients better or not. And if you need to do any course correction, you can do course correction, right? So the intent is finally to create personalized mental health care possible level. So it serves as a heads up. It serves as a recommendation engine which would help you diagnose and treat your customers better.
Yeah, I mean, I can see how valuable Kana is going to be to clients and to providers.
Well, any final words for our audience today, Nidhi?
The only last thing I'll just say is that I encourage people to try Kana once it's launched. Of course, I do imagine it to create a huge change in the landscape of mental health for both providers and for clients. And I encourage everyone to seek professional support, even if you are unsure, if you're experiencing mental health problems. I encourage everyone to seek professional support, whether it's in the form of therapy or whether it's in the form of coaching. As a client told me, which I really kind of stuck with me, she said, when else are you going to talk about yourself for an hour? And I thought, wow, that's where the power of living kind of stuck to me, because there was so much truth to that. So I encourage people to seek support.
No, absolutely. Well said. Golden words, Nidhi. Thank you so much for talking to our audience today, and really appreciate your confidence in our platform, Kana. And, in next episode with Nidhi, we'll talk about, life of a therapist or life of an executive coach in a day, and, but thanks to our audience today. Really appreciate you tuning in today for our first episode of Mind Matters. And it was great talking to you today, Nidhi. Thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it.
Connecting with you too, Tanuj. I look forward to our next episode.
Yeah, pleasure. Take care. Bye.